Hey everyone, in this video, we just wanted to cover what we consider to be 6 truths that are pretty helpful to know about your partner and your relationship in order to optimize that relationship.
And they are uncomfortable, but when you stay in comfort, you lack growth, and that's when relationships hit a wall.
Yeah, so I mean, some of these might be easier for some of you to discuss than others.
Stop.
Some of these might be easier to discuss with your partner than others, and that's going to differ from person to person. But we consider them all important, and so it's going to be a good idea to have these conversations if you want your relationship to be as strong as possible. And it's definitely a good idea to have these conversations early on in the relationship or before you even really commit to each other, simply because
we had all these.
Yeah, we were best friends before we ever even started dating, and so we knew quite a bit about each other. There were still surprises because that's the nature of things when you enter into a relationship, but we did have a lot of it done in the beginning, and that really benefited us down the road. So with that being said, let's dive in so that this doesn't end up being like a 30-minute video. So the first one is that we have personally found it incredibly useful to figure out what your own and what your partner's attachment style is.
Yes.
So attachment styles are this idea that we all had a bunch of childhood experiences that influenced our subconscious perceptions about events and how we responded to them.
And I think some of them are biological as well. In your utero, like we are bathed in our mom's hormones, and so that could influence our attachment styles as well, and that's why some babies come out like screaming right away.
Yeah, and so we aren't going to spend this video talking in depth about attachment styles because I mean it's a very long topic, but there are books out there like this one called the Attachment Theory Workbook, and they're incredibly helpful for understanding more so how you tend to respond.
You fall.
Yeah, and how you respond to certain stressful events in the relationship and how you can overcome those and like what your partner can do to help you overcome that,
and make you feel more secure.
Yeah, so super important for identifying your insecurities, your triggers, and also what does make you feel secure. So with that one said, the other one's kind of related to it because it goes back to childhood, but the second one is to talk with your partner about childhood trauma.
And past relationship trauma, because we tend to relive our childhood trauma in whoever we pick for our mate. I mean, there's a small minority of people that end up going completely opposite of whoever their parents were, but that's very rare.
Yeah.
Usually you end up figuring out that you're married to your dad or your mom like 5 years into the marriage. And you're like, what the hell did I just do?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Because we become adapted as children to certain like neurochemicals, and that's what is our baseline. And so we seek that out in another person, even if like it's super off-putting, we still seek that out in another person subconsciously.
Yeah, agreed. And as far as like past relationship trauma goes, you can bring with you, like if you had negative experiences, let's say that you had negative experiences with your past partner, and you're with a new partner where when your past partner tended to do like A, it was very predictable, it would lead to B, and B feared you. So in your new relationship, if your new partner did A, you might initiate all of those fear responses towards B against your new partner, even though they never go to B. Maybe they go to C or D, right? But you're assuming they're going to B because you have that trauma response.
Yeah, for example, like I think I've been pretty open that I was married to a very physically abusive man. When he gets angry, he's never been abusive towards me, but I freeze. And that's just a trauma response that I have in my nervous system, and we work with it.
Yeah, great example. So again, it's identifying those things, like why are you acting in this certain way? Because usually it's just projection of past events onto the new situation.
Onto the new
and it's partner. Not fair to the new person to have to deal with that. And so really when it comes to past trauma, it is up to you, the person with the trauma, to identify that you have that trauma and to work to start to change the habit loops going on in your head.
Yeah, what helps me is just verbalizing it. Say, oh, wow, like this is why I'm acting like this.
Yeah.
This is not anything to do with you. And then it puts him at ease and me because we've identified the.
Well, but the partner also plays a role because it'll depend in part on what the trauma response is, but the partner also needs to foster a safe environment for, you know, the trauma to fade down and for it to be able to be identified and expressed, you know, without fear of repercussion.
Exactly.
Okay, so
and next one.
The third one is talking with them about what habits you think they do that are keeping them from being their best self.
Yeah, this one's kind of uncomfortable no matter who you are.
Yeah, because
no one wants to hear bad things.
Yep, exactly. But you know, it has to be recognized, like if you both agree to do this together, then it has to be recognized that you're doing it for the sole purpose of just bettering one another, right?
Yeah, you have to go into it like not arguing. Like do not sit down and say this is what I dislike about you and this is the habits that are holding you back in life when they are upset and had a bad day. That's a bad idea. Like the situation needs to be correct and you need to go into it saying I'm going to let my ego like down a little right now.
Yeah, and it can be hard. And so with one like this, it can be easier if you just ease into it, like especially if there's multiple things. It's not fun to get a laundry list of things you could do to be a better human coming from your partner, right? Because it does feel like an insult, even if it's not intended to be. And so just taking it one step at a time, maybe identify one big player, start with that. And then once they finally overcome that, you know, then you
see
can
how they
repeat.
Respond too. Like if they respond all ego, then you know that we probably need to work on your ego a little before we approach your habits.
Yeah. And so like an example of this, because I feel like if we give personal examples, it might just help make it a little better for you to understand. An example of this would be one of my bad habits that I'm overcoming is getting back to the first thing we talked about, right? Negative self-talk when you have a perceived failure at something. And that's a bad habit of mine that I want to overcome, especially because it wastes most of my day and reduces my productivity if I'm just always thinking about like the negative aspect of something. And so that's something that I'm currently working on that has been, you know, that I've realized myself, but also have had Brianna confirm to me. And now that we have that mutual understanding of it, we can both help me overcome it. I can do the work, but she can also help me stay on track and remind me if she starts to see me in one of those states, remind me of the higher goal.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's next?
One. Discussing optimal sex life and any like fetishes.
Oh,
right. I know that's super uncomfortable, right?
That one is, yeah. But sex is important in a relationship.
There's really no way around that. I know a lot of ladies, like they like to pretend like sex isn't important if you're like in a long-term marriage, but yes, it is. That is a man's basic primal desire, and females need it too, but we like to forget that we need it, right? I think it's a discussion that you must have because that's what leads to a lot of infidelity or secrets and lying in relationships. And you need to cover that base and let them feel safe to tell you these things.
I don't have anything to add. And I mean, you have a lot of we don't mean to like throw rocks on people's relationships, but you have a lot of experience just from being a hairstylist where you've worked with older women that have been married for forever.
And they're so unhappy because of this.
Yeah.
Like they're not getting their needs met. Their husbands are probably super unhappy at home too. And it's all because we have this like taboo, like we can't talk about this. And that's silly. Yeah. Because that's the foundation of a relationship is intimacy.
Communication.
And
communication and intimacy, right?
Yeah. So communication about the intimacy.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you have sexual needs that aren't being met, you got to talk about them, or else the relationship is either not going to last, or if it does last, it's just going to be resentful, unhappy, you know, and there might even be, like you had mentioned, secrets and infidelity that go on later on.
To get your needs met.
Yeah.
Because that is what that is.
Yeah. In essence, especially early on in a relationship, it's just important to make sure that you are sexually compatible.
Exactly.
Period.
On the same page.
Yeah. Okay, so second to last one, number 5 here. Where do you see yourselves in 5 to 10 years? Like, seriously. If you're early on in a relationship with someone, this could, you know, might seem like a weird question, but
I ironed out that detail like pretty early on because I don't want to waste my time. I'm huge on not wasting time, right?
Yeah.
And I don't understand if someone has no intention of ever being in a relationship and just wants hookups. I didn't want to invest my time in them.
Yeah. Right? So this is where it benefits you both, because where do you want to be in 5 to 10 years with the person you're having this conversation with? If you're like, well, I don't really plan on doing anything 5 to 10 years, well, how's that answer compared to them? Like, are they in the same boat? Because if so, then okay, keep doing your thing until it ends. But if they're like, yeah, I want a family, I could totally see myself having kids with you, blah, blah, blah. And you're just kind of like,
I don't want kids.
Well, I mean, you need to let them know that, because how do you, like, put yourself in their position? How would you feel if you wanted family and kids 5 to 10 years from now, but the person you're with never actually intended on doing that and was just going to drop off before that happened? How would you feel if you spent 4 years with them and then they're just like, yeah, I never wanted that? It's super
deceitful, which is a quality that is not like good for partnership anyways. Just be upfront with people.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in situations after my divorce where I did not want kids. I did not want to be married again ever. And I led with that on my first dates. Like, I'm like, I'm never going to marry you. I'm never going to have your kids. Like, that's how I was. Obviously things change, but.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is that you need to be upfront with your desires.
Yep.
So that, you know, it's respectful to the other person, and it's.
And I think that there should be spot checks in a marriage or a long-term relationship too.
Yeah.
Like, things change. I knew when I was married to my last husband, by the 10-year mark, I would not be married to him for much longer. And I made him aware of that too. It's not like I was like, but you have to communicate that with someone when you're done. Yeah. Like, you can't just look for something on the side to come along and not communicate that with that person.
Yeah, agreed. All right, last one is asking them if there's anything that you used to do that they really liked that you stopped doing.
Anyone that's been in a long-term relationship knows this one.
They should. Anyway. Yeah. Things fall out because
you get complacent.
Yeah, you get complacent, you get comfortable. Maybe just the dynamics change. Like,
you get kids.
Yeah.
Busy. Like,
yeah. Well, another one. Let's use a personal example. When I moved to New York to start dating Brianna, we would go out, you know, at minimum once a week. We would go on dates. We would go dancing. We went to clubs. We would go to bars. We would just spend all night out with one another. And we did that for most of the beginning of our relationship. And we had a lot of fun. We learned a lot about each other. It was great. Now we don't do that at all.
And both of us don't desire that out of each other either.
Both of us don't desire
But if I was still desiring that, that would be a huge mismatch.
Well, what I was going to say is that I'm just kind of like, whatever. But she still likes getting dressed up. And she likes to go places. Right?
I don't like going out anymore, but.
The point being, though, is that what's something we used to do that we stopped doing? Well, I stopped like taking her out on dates. Part of that was just because our lifestyles changed and we don't really enjoy going out in that way. But it's important to still take her out. Like, maybe instead of now going out at 9 p.m. to, you know, hit up the New York streets or whatever. Now we live in Arizona. Now it's like, well, why don't we go out to dinner?
Yeah,
you know,
so
it's still
it's
taking her out. Yeah, it's still taking her out because neither of us want to go back to what we were doing when we first started dating. But the point I'm trying to make is that I would take her out. I stopped doing that because I became more comfortable and complacent in a relationship, it got brought up at some point some while ago. So then you try and make an effort to start doing it.
Yep.
And
I think that's good.
That solves the problem.
Yeah, I think that happens in a lot of relationships too. Like we get attracted, especially for women. I'm going to talk on this too because you talked on the guy's side. Women, we tend to act a little crazier in the bedroom or whatever in the relationship. I'm being serious. And then once you're married, you're like, I don't have to do that anymore. Yeah, you do. Either you have to do that or just deal with your husband not being happy, and you lured him in with certain actions and then you stopped. How would that make you feel? Yeah. I mean, it's the same with him. Like he takes me out on dates so I can get dressed up because I felt like I wasn't getting dressed up ever, right? Like you have to make the compromise and some give and take in the relationship. And that's what it comes down to. Like you lured someone in with certain behaviors. And so if you stop them completely, you have to ask them if that's okay too. Right? Yep.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Well, I think that was it. One of the longer videos, it feels like, but I won't know until I see the timestamp afterwards, right? But yeah, that's it. So those were kind of just 6 truths that you should probably address with your partner to make sure your relationship's going to be as optimal as it can be.
Exactly.
And if you like this content, then awesome. That's what we're trying to do. Please give us a like. Share this video with someone who might enjoy this information as well. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel. Thanks, everyone.